All right, everybody, welcome to Ascender Virtual Space. I want to say thank you for being here. For those of you who are new to our virtual space, welcome. And for those of you who have been following our events throughout the year, welcome back. It's really nice to see familiar faces. My name is Anya Aleman, Innovation Director here at Ascender. Ascender is Pittsburgh's community for entrepreneurs. We offer mentoring, expert coaching, entrepreneur educational programming, have a co-working space located near Bakery Square, and also a wide library of resources, digital resources located in our website. If you haven't checked out our website yet, I highly recommend that you do so. We have recordings of our previous events, and a recording of today's event will also be there, along with a series of articles, Medium blog posts, and resources to really help you out, explore topics that we want you as an entrepreneur to really dive deeper and take some actionable steps later that will help you and your business. So today's event is part of our free monthly programming. Each month we zero in on a topic that is critical to the entrepreneur's success. This month we are exploring all about mental health. So our theme is called Health Over Hustle. And really, how can you find specific tips, best practices, and just even at space to reflect on what mental health really looks like as an entrepreneur, and how can you learn from others that have walked that walk, tips that they practice on their daily lives to help them both balance entrepreneurship along with everything else going on in their lives. So I am very excited about today's event because of that. Just wanted to give you two little quick announcements. November is already next week, so our next theme for the month will be accelerating your growth. So for this month, we have prepared two different workshops. One of them we will be bringing Catalyst Connection, and this is about all of the entrepreneurs that are working on developing a product. Maybe you're prototyping right now, or you have a physical product that you're conceptualizing, but eventually you will want to take to production. We're going to be discovering and thinking about how do you prepare for small batch manufacturing or manufacturing at scale with one of an expert in manufacturing, and also a local organization that helps entrepreneurs in the manufacturing sector produce their products and take them to scale. So we'll be bringing in Connie Paluca to help us lead an interactive workshop on how to get you ready for production. Later in the month, we will be focusing more about the entrepreneur at a personal level. So how do you think about a growth mindset that will help you in your business? So this means, what are some productivity hacks that you can learn from LaTrenda? How do you really, help yourself work more smartly, so that you can feel a little bit more in control with all of the things going on, but also so that these activities can help out your business journey. So really excited about the two events. I will be sharing the links on the chat box for you to sign up and also explore a little bit more about the main takeaways that you can take from these two events. So that's it for my announcement. So I want to quickly transition to our Executive Director, Nadili Nunez, who will be kicking us off in the session for today.
All right. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. So how many of you is it? I know some of you are off camera, but is this your first real talk? Is this your first real talk?
I'm going to go ahead and process
Irina
this
does.
Thanks.
Anna, can you mute John? I think he's got some background noise here. Thank you. Well, for those who this is their first time, today is kind of a casual conversation with our two guests. And with today's topic is balancing work and life. This is a conversation you've heard over and over and over again, I'm sure, but I think the two guests we have today are pretty awesome and it's going to give you some good tangible insights. We have a list of questions. I mean, we had like 30 or so questions that we received from people who registered for this event, and we sent some of them to the speakers today in advance, but I always add a little bit of my own too. Nothing too scary, Leigh, Alex, don't leave. But it's everything the answer to. Leigh, Alex, feel free to, interrupt or jump in. I try not to always ask the same question to each of you, but the goal today is for people attending to leave with tangible examples, tangible things that they can do after this event, maybe as an example of what you've done and you like, or what you've done and you don't like. So really, that's kind of the goal today. But before we get into the questions, let's get to know a little bit about you. And so I've known Leigh for a few years now, and if there's anyone perfect for today's talk is Leigh, because she's got her hands in a lot of things and somehow manages to balance it all. As I was refreshing my memory of all the pieces, and now she's going to start a new role in the fall as well. I'm like, I don't know how to do it. She does it. I want to see her calendar and her schedule. So Leigh, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I don't know how well I do it, but I'm Leigh Solomon Pugliano. I'm an immigrant originally from Guyana, South America, but I grew up in Pittsburgh. I have a few businesses, my consulting practice called Straightforward, Barrels to Beethoven, which is an arts organization. I'm co-founder with my husband of what is called Limelight Creative Studios. And as Nadili just mentioned, I'll be moving into a new role as CEO of the Equity Impact Center in the fall. I'm also a musician, so sometimes people get confused because during the day I was their consultant and at night they see me performing on stage and they're like, wait. I also have 3 children, 3 girls who I adore. They're my favorite bandmates, I say, but I don't know. I do a lot for a lot of folks in the city. I enjoy that type of work and I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Leigh. And now we're going to move on to Alex, who's the president and director of finance at finance and business development, right? At Ascend. He's like,
among other things. Sure.
I just do things, right? But you're also the board member of the Southside Chamber of Commerce. And so we're kind of getting to know each other today. So I'm excited to have you. And everyone who I know goes to Ascend loves it. So very excited to have you here. Tell us a little bit more about you. You're not from Pittsburgh, right?
I am from Pittsburgh. Yeah,
you are from Pittsburgh.
I grew up in Squirrel Hill, went to Alderdice for high school, left for college, but I just have to say, I don't know how I can compare to Leigh here. That schedule sounds pretty overwhelming to me. So kudos to you for managing all of that. I look forward to learning from you today as well. But I'm one of the 3 founders of Ascend. We're a climbing, fitness, and yoga facility and much more on the South Side. And we have a location in Youngstown, and we're working on some other expansion plans here in the city and elsewhere. And I was a philosophy and German major in college. And so it's been a pretty wild ride for the last 10 years. I've learned a lot on the mean streets of Pittsburgh. Yeah, I'm just, every day's a new adventure, and, trying to do my part, not only for our business, but the community and the regional community. And so I'm on the board of the Southside Chamber of Commerce, and I actually just left a board, which was for the Southwestern Pennsylvania Climbers Coalition, which was an up and coming sort of access and stewardship organization, getting people access to outdoor climbing spots in Southwestern Pennsylvania. So nice. That's just a little bit.
That's a little bit. Okay, great. I think we have a good kind of background for the both of you. Now, I saw some activity in the chat. I love activity in the chat. If someone says something like, oh my gosh, I totally get it, or, oh, I didn't realize that, feel free to use the chat. I like an active chat. I feel like these events are exchange of energy, and definitely I get energy from the chat, from the speakers, from you all. So feel free to use that as the space as you wish. So if it's your first time, we always start off with the warm-up questions. This is sort of a speed round question, and the idea is for our speakers to complete the sentences so that you get a context of where they're coming from before we answer some of the questions. So I'm going to actually put them in the chat here. And if either one of you want to go first and just kind of run down, maybe Alex, how about you go first? Run down. I started my current business, and then continue on.
Yeah, started Ascend realistically 10 years ago, but we opened our doors in 2017. During a typical workday, I work, I'd say on average about 10 hours a day, and Most weeks I really try for 5 days a week, but it's probably more like 6. Our company across both locations has around 90 employees right now, a mix of part-time and full-time. Ideal balance between work and personal life would probably be 30-70. Can a guy dream about, more personal than work? But it's probably the reverse right now, 70-30. And if I had to describe a healthy work-life balance in 3 words, they'd probably be resilient, inspiring, and varied.
Interesting. Okay, nice. I like that. How about you, Leigh?
That was really great. So I started my consulting practice 10 years ago when I was pregnant with my daughter, who's about to be 10. So I always remember that. Barrels to Beethoven, I started 6 years ago, and Limelight 2 years ago. During a typical work day, I'm not sure how many hours I work. I work in shifts. So like an early morning shift, the morning to afternoon shift, and an evening shift. So I do know I work 3 shifts a day. I'm not sure how many hours in a day. My company, so it's crazy because there's like 2 of us everywhere I work. So we don't have a lot of staff. I don't have a lot of staff, but I do work with a lot of people. So I have colleagues and other consultants that support a lot of the work that I do. But Barrels, straightforward. The EIC all has 2 people on staff. What's the next question? My ideal balance. This one is hard for me because I know I didn't tell you this, Nadili, but I actually don't believe in work-life balance. It's just life. That's what I call it. But I didn't want to mess up my opportunity to be here today. I'm kidding. But for me, I think it's, so Barrels to Beethoven, I actually teach with my oldest daughter. And my younger daughters perform with me. So a lot of the work I do in the summer and after school, teaching music and steel pan, I get to do with my children. And I feel really, really good about that. So while it is work, it's obviously a passion. So I don't know the percentage. And then 3 words to describe, and I had to write this one down. I wasn't sure of what words, but the words that come to me most often when I think about, I don't know, when I just think about like work and the things I want to do in the world, is joy is always the thing I think about most, being proud, and then just feeling like accomplished.
I like those. Those are good answers. All right, we'll go in the reverse for this last set of questions. So Leigh, you can start with the number 1 stressor in your work life.
Okay, let me think. This one was hard for me because I think the number 1 thing that stresses me out is like the world and how the world treats me. So maybe racism might be the number 1 thing. But the other thing is a lot of my work life, like in my corporate career before I became a consultant, people didn't recognize like people with children. Like it just was something that wasn't talked about. So that was the first half of my career was just very stressful because people just like don't want to recognize that you have children. And so that becomes a barrier. But I would say, yeah, those 2 things are the number 1 stressors.
Okay. And then kind of following that, number 1 self-care activity.
Number 1 self-care activity is playing the steel pan, making music. I think that, well, I know everywhere I've ever worked, I've had a steel pan with me in that space or in that office because being able to make music is important to me.
Great.
Oh, and then, should I be reading these questions? Sorry.
Yeah, but I'm here to help you.
I got lost in the chat. I'm seeing other things. Let me guide myself. Every day I need to finish this or I'll have a bad day. I don't have a thing that I need to finish in order to have a good or bad day, but I do feel like I need to be a good mom in order to feel like I've had a good day. And then I'm still working on getting more rest, getting more sleep. My daughter was sick last night, so I didn't get a lot of sleep. Maybe in a few more years when everyone's out of the house, I'll get a little bit more sleep. I'm not sure.
What's your number for sleep? Like 8 hours, 7 hours, 4 hours?
6 feels good. 7.5 or 8 is my dream. That's what is on my Apple Watch to track my sleep. I don't ever make it, but that 6 is what I get, hopefully, usually.
Okay, great. All right, Alex, you have some time to think through this. What do you have?
I mean, I probably could have come up with a lot of answers for this, but sadly, I think technology is one of the top stressors in my life, because we're way too accessible thanks to all of those awesome apps. Some of them I can't live without, but I'd like to be perfectly honest. Self-care activity, which I've done a bad job at lately, is actually climbing. That's how this all got started, and it is very therapeutic. I don't do a lot of things that are, quasi meditative, and I think climbing is the closest it comes, and I should do more of that. Every day I need to honestly hang out with my partner, my wife, who is my anchor point, and I would rather be with her than do most things, which she will appreciate me saying. But going on a walk with her, having good conversations, she's the thing that I need to have a good day. And what am I still working on? Can I say everything? I mean, it is okay. I'm still, I'd say
What were
prioritize
you most recently working on?
Our operating budget for next year. um, yeah, that's no, that's not what to improve my work-life balance. I mean, prioritizing really is the thing that is always tough. There's so many easy, more fun things to do than there are, or there are fewer of those than the hard things, but you got to do the hard stuff, and I still have a hard time prioritizing.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Wait, and then says I'm still working. Oh no, that's what you answered. Okay. Leigh, so tell me about this non-existent work life mantra and that it's life. Did you always think of it like this, or what changed?
I did always think of it like this. My father makes the steel pan for a living. And so I got to grow up with a person who loved what they did, even though it wasn't traditional. And I saw very early in life that if you just love what you do and you're really passionate about it, that it's not going to feel like work. I mean, my father worked all day and all night. We were with him a lot of that time, but he was never sad while he was either making instruments or performing on stage. And so I always knew I wanted to have a job or a career or jobs, multiple jobs, because I'm from the Caribbean, so we all have multiple jobs, but that brought me a lot of joy. And I'm like, even if it, making it happen was more difficult than just, be interviewing and getting a job. Like making my jobs happen was hard, but doing the work that I enjoyed doesn't feel like work. I spend a lot of time doing a lot of things, but I just see it as a part of the life that I'm living, not separate from, my children or my family or other things.
Has it ever occurred? Oh, go ahead, Alex.
When I was growing up, my father, who's an attorney who has his own law firm, was always working. I mean, 7 days a week. He had time for us, and we did a lot of things together, but he was always working. And as I was growing up, my sister and I, maybe in our early teens, tried to find him a hobby, and we kept, telling him to, try to take this cooking class, do this thing. And after like 8 years of failing to find him a hobby, he said, "Kids, I really appreciate this, but my hobby is my work, creating this law firm and making it succeed and having this, this brick and mortar thing that produces for lots of people. That's my hobby." And it kind of, a light bulb went off in my head at that point, about, essentially what you're saying, which is that it's all one thing, if you're passionate about it.
Exactly. And my father, same, 7 days a week, but he also doesn't totally believe in time. So that's a different real talk.
That's a different real the construct of time too. So I'm hearing that, the way we relate to work can be as a result of what we saw in our parents. And in some cases, it could be that they worked all the time and they didn't like it and you don't want that, or they worked all the time and they did like it and you want to emulate that as you grow. And I'm curious from either of you, was there a time where you started to work on something that you felt like you loved and you did it because you loved it, and something happened when you realized this isn't it. This has to stop. You weren't enjoying it anymore and you had to stop.
That's tough. I think
it's real talk, so
Yeah, I admittedly had kind of a roller coaster of a few years leading up to coming up with the idea for Ascend and pursuing it. And I'd gotten into law school. I was going to Duquesne, and my girlfriend at the time said, why are you going to law school? And I said, that's a great question. I think it's because I want to work with my dad at some point. I've had this role model. And she said, well, you love languages, don't you? And I said, I sure do. And 6 months later, I was in Austria getting a master's in linguistics. And I halfway through ran out of money, long story. And it kind of sparked in me that I don't know, just that experience reminded me that even though there are certain things that I'm really passionate about and I appreciate them, they are more in the hobby realm than the thing I want to pursue long term. And maybe all those experiences leading up to me coming back to the US were the things needed to get me to push me to become an entrepreneur and go out on a limb and try to do something tangible kind of with my hands in this sort of customer service realm, this customer service meets retail realm. That's what comes to mind when you said that.
That makes a lot of sense. Leigh, do you have one?
Yeah, I think for me, I spent a lot of time thinking about sort of planning and strategizing before I do something. And so I do think that like Alex mentioned, not everything that you enjoy can be a business or can be, and I also spend a lot of time telling clients that too, right? Like not every idea is like what you're going to make a business out of, or what's going to be your professional work. But I do think that if you spend some time thinking about the things that bring you the most joy and what it would look like to present them out into the world, then you have a good chance of making that your life's work.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense too. I did want to touch on something you said earlier, Leigh, about it was like the biggest stressor and as it relates to racism. And we actually received a question in the event, but I'm not sure if you got to see it, but just a little bit more how race impacts your non-work-life balance. I think you alluded to being from the Caribbean, and I'm Dominican, like you have multiple jobs, you just make it happen and work. In what ways does race or racism impact the way you balance or not balance or your work hours?
Yeah, I mean, that is a difficult question because, as with things like race or, being a woman or any other marginalized person, it's hard to know when it's one thing or the other. But I do say that I have to think really intentionally, as we all should, about the spaces that I put myself into, about the people that I surround myself with, about the partners that I work with. If somebody comes up, reaches out and they want to partner on something, I have to I don't have to, but I want to Google and see who their partners are, or see who they support or where they put their money. And, just making sure that you put yourself in safe spaces. And I do that because of bad experiences, right? So anytime you go through an incident, I have to save time for recovery, right? Like something bad really happens. There's an incident I go through, somebody does something inappropriate, and then it takes you a while to get back to who you were. And as an entrepreneur, that's really difficult to be with. So now I have to protect my time, protect my space, and just be really intentional and aware and all the things at all times of who I'm interacting with and what those experiences might be like for me, or how that will translate back to my family, my daughters, and my husband. So it can be difficult. And Pittsburgh, that both from lived experience and all of the reports, we all know what Pittsburgh is like for Black women. And so that is Black women in any category, in whether it's in education or any other sector. All of the data is the same. Those numbers represent real people and real life experiences.
You're absolutely right. And I'm curious, from either of you, do you incorporate, what I'm hearing is you have to sometimes, unfortunately, you can't necessarily changes. There's certain things you can change or not change about the outside world, but you can control yourself and set the boundaries that you have. And I've been beginning to see, especially from consultants, that being written in their contract. Don't expect a reply from an email after 9 p.m. or after 6 p.m. or what are some boundaries that they have, and they actually include it in the contract. And is there anything in work or in your personal life that that you set these boundaries with this second person or this other party or the supplier that you can give an example for?
Well, one thing I definitely do is live by my values and the values that I've set for my businesses and organizations and make them really clear to everyone that I work with. But we also have community agreements, and that is in all of my contracts and agreements. You know, I'm like, here's straightforward community agreements. And, you know, we focus on interacting and centering it around inclusion and dignity and respect and all of those things. So I do use that language in my contracts. You know, people don't listen. They say they're going to do it, and then somebody does something crazy, but not always. You know, it's easier to find people who have those shared values when you're explicit about it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And in a much more sort of administrative manner, we as a company try to not share company-wide information after 6 p.m. on weekdays and on the weekends. That if we've got a big announcement, we use Slack, which I'm sure many people on this call are familiar with. We don't @channel until unless it's between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, because we don't. We know that everybody's phones, not everybody's savvy with do not disturb and whatnot, and we'd like people to know that there's sort of working hours. Even though we're open 100 hours a week, you shouldn't expect communication at that time. But at the same time, we also, we try really hard to respond to people who email us within a reasonable time frame, and so we have to toe some lines of, trying to get quick responses, but also, maintaining that balance and those boundaries. Those don't apply to me, sadly. I feel like I'm looking at stuff, 7 days a week, but that also is calming to me, knowing that I've got a handle on things, as opposed to, did I miss something that was crucial? So
I feel you on that, Alex, because I sometimes send emails to my team or people late at night, and they reply and I get mad at them for replying, but I'm the one who sent the email at 11. But I tell them, like, I just, got productive at that time, but I don't expect you to reply until, your working hours. In the office, especially Anya and I have a lot of work together. And so we developed the system. If there's a Post-it note on the back of our screens that say D&D, do not disturb, do not disturb. Sometimes we're good about it, sometimes we're not, but we're working on the boundaries.
Good analog system for that.
Yeah, there you go.
I like that.
Exactly.
Even though I said technology is one of the the problems, apps like Slack now have a schedule message feature, and so if I do have something that I think is important at 10:30 some night, I'm going to schedule it for the next morning instead of burdening our team with that late at night. There's no reason that I should make their phone possibly ping.
I didn't realize that was the feature. Thank you, because I have saved up messages. So kind of speaking of that administrative component, we all have these long lists of to-dos, and I'm curious, in your to-dos, how much of it is work to-dos versus self-care to-dos, or that balance part to-dos? Do you include that? I don't. I forget to include that in my to-do. Do you?
Not specifically sort of like the work life, but I do have a home to-do list and a work to-do list that I try to follow on a regular basis. I'm currently planning a party for my daughter, and I almost put it into Basecamp. I'm like, if I put these to-dos into Basecamp and assign them to my children and my husband, will they kill me? Probably. So we use the old school, to-do list for the party, but I have had thoughts of transferring my home life to a platform. My youngest daughter would probably love it because she's just like me. But I think that, I think about work and checklists and all of that, or I think about myself and my work in two ways. One, when do I work best and when am I most productive, and what do I need to do in order to get there? And so it's like, if the end result is having a really productive day or productive week, then I know that I have to do all of these other things to get there. I prepare for it like I prepare for a concert, you know, like I can't just go on stage. I know that a month out, 2 months out, a week out, I'm doing like all of these things to prepare for stage. And so that's the way that I transfer that to my work. But I also think about work in seasons or in like projects. So it's not like this one task, but it's really like, I want to do this thing. I want to launch this nonprofit. So that launch requires all of these things to happen. And so I think about it in this like bundled way rather than separate tasks. And then seasons of my life. I try not to bring old Leigh to a new season. Sometimes I do that. And Leigh is like, Leigh, that's old you. You're different. Your life is different now, you know, so you got to do different things. And so some seasons require us to work more because that's just what we're dealing with. I saw that with the pandemic and all my children at home, you know, doing everything they had to do at home, and me trying to work and my husband trying to work. And so that was a season that we're sort of in and sort of out of. But we had to quickly adjust who we are, how we interacted, and I was able to do that. But you know, it's still difficult. The most difficult thing is to recognize when you're in a season, right? And you know that it's going to change. It's not going to last forever, but this is what you have to do right now in this moment.
But I'm curious though, I have a follow-up question to that. Sometimes you have a season, you know, you just have to get this done because all these projects are going, but how do you also know your limits? Because sometimes you see that to-do list, you're like, all right, I'm gonna get everything done. I'm gonna be able to work straight 6 hours. Like I'm a machine, but then hour in goes in, I'm like, I want a break. Like maybe I want to take a nap. How do you be reasonable with yourself?
I hold myself accountable, but I allow for creativity, right? Like I'm a planner, but I'm also an artist. And I think I'm lucky in that way that I can like plan. And then the world shows me something different. I'm like, okay, I see what you're showing me here. let me adjust. And so you make an adjustment and you shift things how you need to, but you can't make that plan, make that strategy and expect that you're going to stick to it. Like that's most likely not going to happen. But planning and prioritizing and having a sort of, you know, the checklist and the task lists, or using a project management tool or whatever you're doing, it's all important, I think, but also important is knowing when to shift and adjust.
That's fair.
Yeah,
Alex, go ahead.
One flaw I have with project management tools like Asana or Basecamp, and maybe there's like the supercharged enterprise version that, you know, knows how long it takes you to do something and it can plan out your day for you. You kind of need to have that experience of, you know, I've done this task, you know, in the context of different projects X number of times. I know it's going to take me, you know, 20 minutes. You kind of have to know the recipe before you go into something, so that you can look at your day and yeah, you might have 20 things on the to-do list, but you know they're all short, you know, small items or manageable. And so sometimes that's overwhelming for me to, you know, just looking at a list of things, it feels really overwhelming. And you know, I make time every day to look at my to-do list and really digest what's on there, and then move those pieces around throughout the day when I know, you know, I'm much more focused in the morning until 11 a.m. And then, you know, starting to run out of steam, start doing something that's less, you know, mind intensive. But the other thing I was going to say, though, is that if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't happen in my world. And so even on the personal side, you know, if I know that we want to get on our paddle boards next Wednesday night at North Park, it's got to go on the calendar. And when it's on there for whatever reason, it happens. And so I appreciate calendars big time. And we've got lots of them, but that's a recommendation I have. Put it on the calendar, especially if it's, you know, if it's important to you, your family, friends. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Okay. I was just going to say, you have to plan your joy, right? Like put your joy on the calendar. You could be picnic with the girls in the park, whatever it is. I put it all on my calendar and I make sure to make time for that. When my children were much younger, people would say, you know, how are you able to do all of these things? I'm like, well, I plan my joy just like I plan my work. Why would I take all this time to plan work and not take time to plan joy? So While I love spontaneous joy, and it happens, we will bust into a dance party at any given moment in my house. I also love planned joy because I don't want to miss out on the things that I want to do with my children too. And I know that if I don't make space for that, you could end up working all day and night and on the weekends and not being able to really be and do things with people that you care about. So I think that's really important, Alex.
And respecting that calendar hold for that joy, right? Where it's like, well, I guess that could wait till next week, or we'll do this other thing. No, this is as important as a meeting or as important as this other task. This is part of it. I was going to do so thinking about that balance and the scheduling, if you remember that triangle when it comes to food, where you can either have like, if it's affordable or like cheap, quality or fast, pick two. Like you can't really get three in a restaurant. I feel about that with work, where it's like meetings, emails, and then the task list, like getting the actual work. And I can never get the three done like effectively. And so frankly, this is just for me, if you can help me out. How do you figure out the three?
Well, I think this just for me, it's knowing what parts of the day those work best in. And since I'm a really high performer from 7:30 in the morning until 10:30, this 3-hour chunk is, the time when I can get projects done. I don't want to schedule meetings during that window, nor do I want to waste my productivity on, what are a couple minute responses to emails. And so I do try to look at my day and my week and, respect those sort of virtual boundaries that I've created for myself of, meetings are best after lunch when you're sort of tired and you need the moving pictures to keep you engaged. It's going to be different for everybody, but those are the things that I've learned work for me, is just, knowing what's best at what time of day.
Yeah, I think knowing yourself really well is the first part of that. Like Alex said, knowing when you're most productive. I am most productive from like 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. because I had to get things done before my kids, maybe 5:30. I wanted to do 5 a.m., but I can't do that anymore. But, post-pandemic, it's like 6:30. But I know I'm most productive like before my kids wake up. And then maybe because that's just the way that I've shifted myself over the last 18 years. But I don't know, that one is still difficult for me. I do know what my mornings look like, and I'm really good at night. But the daytime definitely shifts depending on how many meetings and all of that, what's going on. I think that the one thing I've tried to do over the last year, I spent a lot of time last year, of course, in meetings and on Zoom, but this year and moving into building out the EIC, I'm really focusing on less meetings, less time away from the actual work that I want to do.
No, that's good. I heard someone say, I don't go to a meeting that doesn't have an agenda, just because there's so many meetings that can be just like could have been an email, as they say, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is this? What is the purpose here? What are we trying to achieve here?
If there's no agenda and nobody sends out a little like after meeting review with some next steps, why did we do it?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Well, I've switched my Calendly so that they're no longer 30-minute meetings. It's 25. Just like even if it's shorter or 40, I don't have hour-long meetings. It's 45 minutes. And it gives me time between meetings too to just readjust, but also to let people know like I like chatting, catching up, but I got other things to do too. So that might be another suggestion. There was a question here that, what was it? Candid. Oh, I thought this was interesting. Should leaders be open and candid about their stress or concerns with their team? Like that, they're just doesn't have to be specific concerns. Like, I don't know if we're gonna pay the rent next month. It's like just I'm stressed. How do you feel about a leader being open about that?
I would say, I think. Oh, go ahead.
No, you please.
I would say, I haven't had a large team in many years, but I do believe that, and I tell all of my clients this, that leaders should be, while you don't have to share too much of your personal life and too much personal information, you should be open, you should be honest with your team members. It's still a working relationship, but I think it's important to be open and honest. I mean, if you can't pay the rent, I would have told my team, like, listen, y'all, we can't pay the rent. Everybody step up those sales. So I may have shared that if we couldn't pay the rent, because we're a team, right? It's not, everything is not on the leader's shoulders. And so I think it's important to be open and to share things to a certain point.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I think, the way I approach it is, if my team knows I'm stressed by my actions, I've done a bad job. I need to set good expectations with folks that if I've got a busy week, my answer to somebody asking me to help them with something shouldn't be, no, I'm stressed and busy, I can't do that. It should be, let me find some time, to help you with this. It might be next week. Is that okay? And really, leaving some breadcrumbs as to why the schedule is the way it is, or why I seem busy. But it is never, I don't like it when our employees come to me and say, I'm having a bad day, I'm stressed, I can't do that. I mean, that doesn't feel good to me. I kind of, take it on the chin because I need to. And I just think about how that would come off going in the other direction. And I have faltered for sure, no doubt. But I try to lead by example in that realm for sure.
And how would you, so leading by example, give me kind of a schedule that you think is a good example for your employees to follow. Like, what does your schedule look like?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily. I'm a perfectionist and I have very high expectations, and I know that. And I oftentimes don't even like to say that, because then people think, well, oh, so you're just going to be okay with not perfection then? So you're commenting on my work not being perfect, or not meeting your expectations. I try to not. I certainly don't want people to do necessarily what I do on a given week in terms of checking in 7 days a week, having oversight and hands in all these different departments and buckets. But I do want people to see that it's okay to say, I've got a pretty packed day, can I get back to you tomorrow? As opposed to feeling this sort of urgency with a coworker or a boss or really anybody to say, like, yeah, I'm super stressed, but let me try to get that in. Like, people are cool if you say, I can get that to you tomorrow, maybe even by Friday. Is that okay? But setting those expectations right out of the gate is what's most important to your stakeholders, so they know what to expect. If something truly is critical, yeah, you got to drop stuff and get it done. But otherwise, set good expectations, communicate well, and you're probably going to have a good outcome.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, Alex, is you all should have balance, but don't look at me.
Not necessarily. In my head, I say that.
That's what I say.
I try to not exhibit the out of balanceness, to start with. I know what's going on in my head, and I just want to instill, upon our team that, yeah, you have to get stuff done, because otherwise this doesn't all work. But don't kill yourselves. Don't make your coworkers stressed out with your stress, and just talk about it. And yeah, set those expectations.
Yeah, I would admit I'm a little bit of, you all take care of yourselves, I'll be fine. But the one thing that I tell my clients this a lot for the organizations that they run, it is important, like Alex said, to communicate, right? Like to set boundaries and make sure that you're leading by example in the way that you want to communicate and interact both with your teams and in the work that you do. But I don't know, I think the one thing that I try to do is to say, this is what I'm doing, but this is what I expect from you. So people are really clear that, one, like, we're human beings, and I don't expect the way that I do things or the way that I approach the world to be the way that somebody else does. So this is what I'm doing. Let me know what works for you. Yeah, but it is difficult sometimes to want to ensure that everybody's okay, and you have different expectations for yourself, and I don't want people to think that I have those expectations for them. Those are the expectations I have for myself.
Right. No, that's fair. I think it's hard to strike that balance because people still look to you as the example, and it's just a reminder. It's like, listen, I'm also working through this. I'm also trying to reduce from 7 days to 6 days, but if you can do it sooner than me, do it, right? And sometimes there's some weeks that you need to work all 7 days, and that happens. And some days, a week you might work 5 days, and those come rarely, but they feel great. I'm curious. I'm looking at the time, so I'll ask this question because we talk a lot about work and productivity, but I want to touch base on your life. You both have partners, and I think about those who have a wife, a husband, a long-term partner, or someone serious, significant in their life. How do you balance being able to do all that work, but still creating that time with your partner to continue investing in your relationship? And Leigh, I know you do a lot of that.
Well, I mean, because Nadili called me out. First, you start with just being vocal about what your needs are and being curious about what your partner's needs are. And my husband and I, we've been together for half of my life. How old do you think? I'm just kidding. Half of my life we've been together, so a very long time.
Put it in the chat, everyone. Put it in the chat. How old do you? No, don't do that. I'm just kidding.
You could do that. But keep it young. I'm kidding. But it's important to, as anything else. I mean, one, my husband and I are not lucky enough. I guess it's sort of like brave enough, maybe a little bit crazy enough to work together. So he supports the work I do with Barrels to Beethoven. We're launching this other business together. I know a lot of people say don't do that, but we're trying it out. But also we are very much, we're stuck in this sort of middle space where we love family, we love tradition, we love those things. And so we do protect those things. We love our time together, so we protect that. And so it may not be often because we have 3 children that we're together alone. But he enjoys, coming to my family's house for whatever traditional thing that we're doing, as much as I enjoy going to his family's house for, a traditional Italian thing. His family's from Italy, so we're also both from immigrant families. So I said, the most important thing to me is to be really honest. When I met my husband, I was like, I want to live a joyful life. I need to be loved very greatly. I was like all these things. I was a lot. But
wait, can you keep going? Because I need to write this down. What do I need to tell my future?
Well, you write down what you need, but all the things you need, be really vocal about it. And I think just protect the time that you have together, protect your relationships. Those things are, however I feel about, my children, being a mom, about being a wife, I know it's going to impact my work. And so if I'm not feeling good about being a wife or not feeling good about being a mother, what else really matters? So those things are like the core of what I protect, and everything else is, given and done with love, but most importantly, the relationships in my life.
That's fair. And Alex, do you have any parameters where, Sunday is date night and that is a preserved moment? Anything on your end?
Nothing in particular, but we are each other's number ones for sure. And, we will be very quick to tell each other if something feels out of balance. And there are certain weeks that are definitely out of balance, and you got to make up for it. And you've got to remember how that week felt to make sure that, you don't do that again on purpose. And, at the end of the day, I do, at risk of making my partners and our investors disappointed with me, family and friends are so much more important than honestly everything else. And, businesses and business ideas and jobs are definitely transient, but, those anchor points in our lives are there hopefully for as long as possible. And, I don't like saying no to friends and family because of work, even though I love work and it's my passion. I did this thing. I want to say yes to people, those important people in my life, and same for my wife. I want to do everything with her, and I want to have unlimited time with her. So yeah, always trying to find more time. But I hope that answered your question. I digress.
Yeah, but I'm curious. Oh, Leigh, did you unmute because you want to add something?
No.
So when we use the word balance, and we talked about it today, you don't always get it right. It's dynamic, right? Depending on the project, depending on family things, depending on the time of year, it's dynamic. And what happens too is that you don't always do it 100% right. And in those moments, how do you create space for yourself to forgive yourself or to have patience with yourself? What does that self-talk or moment look like for you when that occurs? When you feel like you're really performing poorly and balancing these things?
I would say first, I don't compare the two. You know, work and all these systems and all these things are man-made, but I feel like the love I have for my children, my husband, and my family is like the most natural thing. So, as my father would say, we're asking the wrong question. Y'all don't want to be with him for a while. Well, you would learn a lot, but it's a lot. You know, work and life cannot be balanced because, I mean, how could they even be, right? Like, so I don't put that much pressure on myself. And I do put a lot of pressure on myself, right? Like the world requires me to, but I don't put that much pressure on myself to balance my work and life. My pressure or whatever, the focus or the center is my life. And so I don't really even compare the two. It's not even, you know, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that's how I see it.
No, that's your answer. What about you, Alex?
I think I think I'm a pretty rational person. And so I think I sometimes just need to like get up and walk to the other side of the room and say, it's not that important. You should, don't be so hard on yourself. Like it will most likely work out. Or, I don't know, we are very hard on ourselves. And I think, the thing that I was thinking about big time leading up to this chat was we see so many poor examples of entrepreneurs in the media and on TV that you've got to be, working 18-hour days at your, at whatever you're doing. And to me, the vision of success looks very different from what is portrayed in those moments. And I don't think somebody who's working 18 hours a day is successful in my opinion. I think success is much more of this balance where, I'm thankful every day that I have two main partners in our business and I can take a vacation and not feel guilty about it. I've got that backup. And it's way harder for folks who are in business on their own. I know that. But at least for me, I try to ignore the Wolf of Wall Street. I don't even have any good examples of this, but the people who are just working way too hard, in my opinion. And yeah, I just, I try to create my own create my own destiny and my own vision out of all of this of what works for me. And that's different. It's going to be different for everybody. But for me, it's not 100-hour work weeks. It's all the things.
These are two really complementary answers to this question, and to use Leigh's phrasing is that it's kind of man-made, this sort of balance or expectation, and at the end of the day, you're the one living this life, and everyone else can be expecting you to work the 12 hours, to work only 5 hours. What is it? What brings you joy? What makes sense for you? Because you're the one who has to deal with it day in, day out. And if that means that you want to work 7 days out of the week, or you want to be with your family, 7 days, whatever that means to you, that you are the only person you need to be answering to, and maybe your family in certain ways too. And so I think that's actually really profound. I don't know for anyone else on the call, but for me growing up, it was work. Your worth is based on your output. And that is not a healthy perspective to have, because it messes up with your self-identity. And when it comes to your work, especially as you progress in your career, and you'll never be satisfied, and that affects your whole life if you're expecting output, because you are human. We are human, right? Yeah. So that's really profound. And I know we only have a few minutes left, but if there's anything you want to leave, either of you, Alex and Leigh, leave the attendants or the participants here today with.
I think Alex reminded me of something when you said you were grateful for. Not, I want to encourage everyone to do what you do for yourself. And I'm always saying, don't listen to me. I might give advice. And at the end of that, I say, but don't listen to me. Because I think it's important for people to create the things that work best for them. But the thing that has gotten me through all of the work that I've done, and I've been able to balance all of these things, really is gratitude. Like, I really just always take a moment to be grateful. I think really intentionally about the ways that or the people that have gotten me to a certain point, that have gotten me here today. And so I'm just like, maybe too much. My husband says that allows me to forgive people too much, but I have to have gratitude, and I have to have grace. And I think that those things have, they're what support the balance in my life, for sure.
And I do want to add to Leigh there. Gratitude is so important. If you want to put it into practice, like, that is something either you wake up and write it down, or verbalize 2-3 things that you're grateful for. It could be as small as, like, this bed is super comfortable, to as big as, oh, this job I got, or this, my partner, or whatever it might be. So put it into practice. It does change your attitude towards things, and it gives you energy. It's wild. All right, Alex, what about you in the last minute?
Well, just, segueing from literally the last word you said, energy, I think one thing that is incredibly important to me, and I think should be important to a lot of people, is that, your gas tank is only so big. And quite frankly, the emptier it gets, the harder it is to refill it. And so if you're pushing yourself to the brink in any of the silos of your life, it gets harder and harder to recharge that. And so I know we're talking about balance, and I certainly know that I don't have all of the answers, but I do know that when I've learned to self-identify when I'm starting to feel empty in one of those silos, and that's a good sign to say, hey, I gotta go do that thing that makes me happy for a couple of hours and recharge those batteries, refill that tank. So knowing you is the most important part of all of this, and what you can handle.
The work will be there tomorrow.
Sure will.
It sure will.
I started to learn that. I just thought, I have to get this done, and it's like, you know what? I'm taking the day off. I'm doing it tomorrow. And guess what? It was still there, and got it done, and I'm more sane for it. So you're absolutely right, Alex. All right. Well, I know we're out of time. I'm going to pass it on to Anya. But Alex and Leigh, thank you so much for today and the conversation. You two are the perfect people to have.
Oh, thank you for having me.
More. So I am, speaking of grateful, I'm grateful for this talk and for you two to join us and sharing so many great, just really profound thoughts and something to really think about and walk away with. So thank you, everybody, for sticking around. Sign up for other events, and I'll see you next time. So good night.
Plan your joy, as Leigh said. Plan your joy.